Ever wish you could, like, give your houseplants a little extra oomph? Or maybe keep your groceries fresh longer, but, just using energy.
It does sound a bit like science fiction, right?
Totally. But that's exactly what we're taking a deep dive into today.
We're going to be exploring something called the Universal Quantum Interface. It's also known as the UQI. And we'll be examining the science behind it.
We've got excerpts from an interview with Dr. Don Paris, and we are not short on material. We've got videos, research articles, experiments, all of it, and it all revolves around this idea of using scalar waves to, get this, actually have an impact on living things. So they describe the UQI as this cloud-based device. Sounds normal enough, right? But then it gets interesting. They're talking about scalar electromagnetic transmitters.
Those are some big words.
Big words. And get this. Geometric pattern algorithms to, get this, interact with your energy field, like your chakras and meridians and all that.
It's funny you should mention energy work, right? Because that's what this reminds me of. Like, think about acupuncture.
Yeah.
Been around for centuries. Focus on those meridians, getting the energy flowing. And the UQI. Seems like they're going for something similar, but like remotely.
Right. So how do we even begin to unpack something like that?
Right. So the UQI, the folks behind it, they're claiming that it uses these scalar waves to send, well, beneficial information to things, plants. They even mention the possibility of impacting people. And they say it can even influence their growth and health.
Okay, so right away, we're hit with scalar waves and informational fields. I'll be honest, I haven't been to a physics lecture in a while. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. Imagine you drop a pebble into a pond. Right. What happens? You see those ripples spreading outward?
Yeah, totally.
So those ripples, those are like traditional electromagnetic waves. Now, scalar waves, at least how they're described in this context, are more like the pressure that exists everywhere in the pond all at once. They're not traveling in that same kind of ripple-like way. And the idea here is that they can carry a different type of information.
So instead of, say, sending a radio wave to your car stereo, it's like you're influencing the entire space your car exists in.
That's the theory they're working with, yes. And this information, as the creators of the UQI put it, this information gets embedded into what they're calling informational fields. Think of it like this. Even though you can't see the Earth's magnetic field, it still has a big impact, right? It influences compasses, and it even influences some animal migrations.
Right.
So they believe that living organisms, they have similar fields. And this technology, this UQI, they think it can tap into them.
Okay, now, this is where it starts to get really interesting and maybe a little mind-bending, to be honest. But before we go full X-Files here, can you tell me a bit more about the UQI itself? Like, how does this thing even work from a practical standpoint?
From what we can see, there's this physical device, sleek, very modern looking, but there's a whole cloud-based software component too.
See, that's huge. We might be looking at a whole new trend here, devices going beyond just what they can do on their own, tapping into the power of cloud computing. It's like the difference between, say, an old calculator and a smartphone, right? The possibilities get a whole lot bigger.
So let's break it down a bit. The demo highlights some key features. We've got the device, obviously, login system makes sense. But then there are these programs you can run. Some are free, which is always good, but some are paid. And the categories, things like, get this, chakras and negative energies.
And then they toss around terms like geometric pattern algorithms. So are you telling me there's a button on there that's just like, make my tomatoes tastier?
Pretty much. And if you want to get really specific, there's this other device. It's called the SC5. And practitioners can use the SC5 to create personalized programs. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The inventor of this technology, Dr. Paris, he claims that they actually found geometric patterns to be even more effective than just numerical tuning.
Hold on, back up. Shapes? Like drawing a certain symbol can impact how a plant grows or something.
That's what they seem to be suggesting, yeah. They believe that by converting numerical tunings into these geometric patterns, they can transmit the intended information more effectively. They haven't explained exactly why it works that way, but it really makes you think about the power of symbols and geometry in different cultures throughout history.
Okay, wow. That is wild. I have to admit, I'm like more than a little curious now to actually see if this thing really does what it claims. What kind of results are we talking about here?
Well, they've done like a whole bunch of experiments, and I've got to say, some of the visuals are really pretty striking, especially the ones with food. Like there's this one experiment with an apple.
Okay.
They cut the apple in half, right? And then they treat one half with scalar waves and leave the other half alone.
Yeah.
And get this, months later, the treated half is still fresh, but the other half, well, it's, compost.
Okay, now I really need to see this to believe it. But assuming this isn't just some clever editing trick, like what are they saying is actually happening there? Are these scalar waves actually stopping the natural decay process somehow?
Yeah, so they don't really explain the mechanisms all that clearly, but they suggest that it's about more than just like simple preservation.
Wait, hold on. You're saying it's not just about keeping your strawberries from getting moldy. It could actually make them better for you.
That's what they're implying, yeah. And it gets even more interesting when you start looking at the seed germination experiments they did.
Okay.
They've shown that seeds treated with this technology, they sprout faster and they grow significantly larger, even when compared to the untreated seeds in a controlled environment.
So bigger, tastier crops, potentially, all while using fewer resources. I mean, that could be huge, especially when you think about all the challenges that modern agriculture is facing right now.
Exactly. And it's not even just about like increasing the yield. There are these reports, they're talking about large-scale agricultural projects in China where they've used the same kind of technology.
Really?
Yeah, they were using it to revitalize farmland. And get this farmland was heavily polluted.
Okay, now we're talking about potentially solving some major global problems here. Have these findings been replicated, like by other independent researchers?
Well, the results they're showing are definitely compelling. I'll give them that. So to really know for sure, we need more independent studies. And these studies need to be rigorous.
So what you're saying is a healthy dose of skepticism is still warranted at this point.
For sure.
But, okay, let's play pretend for a second. Let's say that this technology does actually live up to even half of what they're claiming. What would that even look like? Like for the average person?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, imagine a world where you could actually improve your health just by drinking a glass of like programmed water.
Okay.
And where your garden is like flourishing, but with almost zero effort on your part. And maybe, just maybe, food shortages are a thing of the past. I mean, that's the kind of future that this technology is hinting at.
It's like we've unlocked a whole new way to interact with energy, with information even. And speaking of which, one of the things that really stood out to me that I definitely want to talk more about is the potential impact on human health. They had a whole section on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where things get even more interesting, I think. And honestly, maybe a bit more ethically complex too.
Right.
Yeah, because the research seems to suggest that you can use this technology to create what they're calling digital essences of traditional Chinese herbs.
Digital essences. Okay, so instead of like brewing a cup of herbal tea, you'd be sending a digital version of that herb directly into your body. I'm not gonna lie, that sounds kind of incredible, but also a little hard to wrap my head around.
I know, right? But that's what they're saying. They claim that these essences, they carry the same energetic properties as the actual like physical herbs. And here's the kicker, they say you can program them directly into the water. And they even have like specific programs for a bunch of different health concerns, everything from chronic pain and insomnia to some more, serious illnesses too.
So are they saying that this could eventually replace traditional medicine altogether?
They're careful not to make any statements that definitive.
Okay.
They emphasize that this technology, it's meant to work with traditional healthcare approaches, not to replace them entirely.
Right, which of course is the responsible approach, especially when you're dealing with something as complex and personal as your health. But still, this whole idea that you could address certain health concerns just by drinking a glass of water, I mean, it's fascinating. Did they have any specific examples or evidence to kind of back up these claims?
They did, and this is where things get really, well, they threw out some big numbers. We're talking reports of over 80,000 people. And these people, they've used this technology and they reported positive results. And not just for, one or two things, but for a whole range of different health conditions.
Right.
We can be curious about this. We can explore these possibilities, but we also have to demand more independent verification. That's the only way we're really going to know.
Which at the end of the day, that benefits everyone, right? I mean, if this technology, if it turns out to be everything they're saying it is, well, it could be truly groundbreaking.
No question. We could be talking about a whole new way of thinking about healing, agriculture, even just how we interact with the world around us. It's huge.
Yeah.
And these experiments, as crazy as they seem, they're just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this whole quantum biology thing.
Feels like we're just scratching the surface here. But how do we know what's real and what's not? How do we wrap our heads around all this? I mean, that's like a whole new world, right? Quantum this, quantum that. But how do we even know what to believe?
The million-dollar question, right?
Oh,
and that's why we're doing this deep dive, right? You can't just accept everything you see, especially with something this out there. You got to be like, hold on, what's the deal here? Ask those tough questions. And this whole quantum biology thing, it's so new, we're all figuring it out as we go. But here's the thing, right? Just because something sounds crazy doesn't mean it's not true. You just have to, approach it with an open mind, but also a healthy dose of skepticism.
So basically, do your research, ask questions, and don't be afraid to say, show me the receipts.
Exactly. That's how we figure out what's really going on, what this tech can really do.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground here. Supercharged seeds, those forever fresh veggies, even the whole energized water thing. This UQI, who knows if it'll pan out, but it's definitely got us thinking.
It's definitely got something. And even though we don't have all the answers yet, the important thing is to keep asking those questions. Keep digging, keep the conversation going like we're doing right now. Who knows what we'll discover, right?
That's a great point to wrap things up on. Thanks for, walking us through all this. And to everyone listening, hopefully this has given you some things to think about, maybe some more questions to ask. Until next time, keep exploring.